All right, we've got Paolo in Boston. You're on with Justin and Matt. How are you?
Paolo.
By the way, I'll remind everybody in chat, since I just happened to see that message, to go ahead and click the like and subscribe. And if you don't like me, go ahead, click the dislike. That's fine too. You're free to do that. That whether or not it's free will is another story, but you're free to do that. Paolo in Boston, how are you?
Hey, Matt, Justin, how are you?
Hello.
Nice to talk to you.
Good. We're on the air.
Great, thanks, guys. First of all, big fan of the show. I called it, before maybe like 8 years ago. So happy to be talking to you guys again.
Wow, that's about the time I started watching this show.
Yeah, wow, didn't know that. So perfect. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about something that's been kind of in a way bugging me since I started watching the show, which is I've watched a ton of videos of the show, maybe Matt and debates, and this thing is coming up about secular morality, right? And then one of the questions that come up all the time is from the theists, right? If you don't believe in a God, how can you have objective morality, right? And I think Max has clarified several times that objective morality would mean, actually maybe what these theists are meaning when they say objective means absolute, right? Something that cannot be questioned or is not subject to interpretation or personal opinion or whatever. I guess my point is that I think, hello?
I was saying that, yes, that is in fact one possibility. My view on morality is that the foundation, which I'm using, well-being, is ultimately subjective. There's nothing intrinsic or imperative about the universe that would require that. However, once you get that, then you can make objective assessments about it, and that's as objective as it can be.
First of all, I agree. However, I think those words are pretty useful here, intrinsic and imperative, because I think that's what theists or religious people at least find appealing about basing your morality on God, right? And it all comes to the well-being kind of foundation of morality. Because I think what they're thinking is, with a God, right, I have a foundation for morality such that, or at least with some interpretations of what God will do if you don't behave, so to speak, with that kind of morality, you have this idea of someone who has no for the human being, but does not want to go to hell, for example, will actually behave if you base your morality on a God that says, if you kill somebody, I'm going to send you to hell, or I'm going to punish you in some way, right? I think
it's actually worse than that, because the people who want to appeal to a God are actually kind of looking for a cop-out. Like they realize, hey, I don't know, and granted, not everybody thinks about it on this level, but for the people who are like, if there's a God who's dictating what morality is, then I'm no longer responsible. I don't have to spend any time thinking about morality. I don't have to spend any time justifying it. I don't have to spend any time worrying about whether or not what I've been told is moral is actually moral. I just get to run with it. And if it turns out I'm wrong, oh, well, I was trusting God. And God, it's a way of not having to do the hard work of actually thinking about what makes something right or wrong.
Okay, I think that's a very fair point, and I agree with that. However, when we come to something that's a bit more obvious, so to speak, like murdering, right? I think I don't think many people will think that murdering someone is justifiable. Murder is something that.
Here's the thing, Paolo. First of all, murder has a specific legal definition. It's specifically a particular type of unjustified killing. Even the people who you think intuitively come down against murder, some of them would say it is wrong to kill anyone ever at any time. And others would say, it's sometimes wrong to kill people and sometimes not wrong. Like they're in favor of capital punishment quite often, for example. So they just don't view that as murder.
Agreed. But for example, we're talking about a more specific example of somebody trying to mug another person and killing them in the process, right? Sure. I would agree that most people will believe that's immoral or unethical.
I would hope so.
And let's say that this person who killed the person they were trying to mug is someone who has no regard for the well-being of another human being, right? What I think what religious people are saying is, if we could convince that person, right, that they should believe in a God and that God will punish them if they murder somebody else, maybe that can keep them from murdering other people and can make them behave. I don't think that's something that secular morality could ever achieve.
I think it's something religious morality could ever achieve. If there's someone who genuinely does not care about another human being on this planet, what difference does it make whether you try to give them a secular reason or claim that God cares? If they don't care, you got to find a way to make them care. And if you can make them care with a lie about a God, who wants them to care, then you could also potentially show how it's in their best interest to care. That, yeah, you may not like that person, but if you take action against them, there will be consequences from society that you're going to want to avoid.
Okay, actually, I had not thought of that. However, if you can kind of like, I mean, I think what this, I'm not saying that I agree with it, but I think what most religious people are saying is, if you take God out of the equation, there's a very high, or you could convince like everybody in the world that God doesn't exist, and therefore kind of like destroy the foundation of some people's morality, right? They're afraid that people, or a lot of people, would be out there raping and killing, right? And they're saying there's there's not an argument from secular morality that could replace that. And I think that's why people are so focused on this question about objective morality or absolute morality. They want something that will keep civilization together in their view.
I get it. Paulo, let me ask this, and I want to let Justin chime in here as well. Do you think that if everybody stopped believing in a God, the number of rapes and murders would significantly increase?
I do not.
I don't either. I think that the people who are likely to do rapes and murders are likely to do them whether there's a God or not, whether somebody convinces them that there's a God or not, and that by and large, the good people are generally pretty good, and they didn't need a God or a religion to explain to them why it's a bad thing to hurt other people. And the people who are doing that don't seem to care much or don't care enough, irrespective of whether they believe in a God. And so this entire line of argument essentially saying, so the call screener has down that you think the problem with secular morality is that people are inherently selfish. But my argument is that you can be purely, properly selfish and still be a moral, upstanding member of society. Because if I'm truly selfish, I want what's best for me. And when I recognize that living in a world where people aren't running around raping and killing each other benefits me as well as other people, then it's in my best interest to work alongside my fellow human being to make sure we work to create that world. That's in my best interest. You can give the appearance of altruism, and you can have the appearance of perfect morality through purely selfish interest. There's nothing wrong with being selfish, provided it's not myopically selfish. Like, I'm going to do whatever the hell I want to do, consequences be damned. Proper selfishness means I want to do what is best for me, and recognizing that I have to share space with people. Like, I could just be mean to Justin until he quits. But it's in my best interest to not be mean to Justin until he quits, because he's answering emails, which saves me time and I benefit from it. Plus, Justin answers them well and is a nice guy with good thoughts. And that's somebody that benefits me generally in life. So why would I not want to keep him around? Morality is not as hard as people make it out to be. And I don't think that the God thing really adds anything constructive. There's the fear-mongering that goes into these claims against secular morality. Name one problem with secular morality that is in any way solved by appealing to a God. One.
Well, I think that the point, I mean, I first of all, I think that ideas, just like mentioned, are really, really great. And I'm definitely going to explore them. And yeah, I mean, I guess the argument from these religious people would be like, well, basically the appeal, or basically this kind of thing, basically people behaving through this fear mongering you just mentioned, is something that cannot be achieved through secular means. And I think you're giving a pretty good argument as to why it can be done through secular means.
I'm not aware of anything that can't be, because here's one thing, and this may change the way you look at it. Let's say that people are being moral because of God X. Let's not tie any specific relation to it. Just they became convinced of some God, and that is helping them be moral. Let's just begin with that assumption, okay?
Yeah.
Now, if that God doesn't exist, then what we've demonstrated is that people's moral behavior can be controlled with a lie, right?
Correct.
And that lie could be a secular lie, because it is. Telling someone there is a God when there isn't, that is a secular world. And so there's nothing about a secular worldview that says, hey, we can't lie to someone. I just think that there's also a way to do it honestly.
No, actually, that makes sense. I think one of the things I'd like to clarify is that, and probably I couldn't make this clear to the screener, I actually wanted that problem word to be kind of in quotation marks. It's more of like the problem or so-called problem with secular morality for religious people, which is, I actually agree with everything you said. And the other thing is, I guess this is part of the reason I called, because I see a ton of arguments, whether it's in debates or in the show, about people arguing or starting to talk about objective morality. And then kind of like, because they don't understand quite the term, the discussion starts like degenerating into all these philosophical and definitional or discussions on semantics, right? Whereas where I think the point that they're really trying to address is, in the absence of a God, how do we keep civilization together? And how do we keep people from raping and killing each other?
I think we'd do it the same way that people did it outside of religion throughout history. Go talk to the Piraha, who don't even have a concept of God until Christian ministries went down there and fucked up their portion of the rainforest.
I also think that it adds in, if you have somebody that truly doesn't care about their actions at all, and even if you got them to believe that there was a God that wanted them to do right, that by most versions of Christianity, you could still get the cop out. The person could still be a terrible person, could go kill, rape, steal, whatever, do anything, and then just get blanket forgiven if they came to God and asked for forgiveness. So I think it offers somebody a cop out, which doesn't help anything.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree, Justin. And actually, in that regard, I remember hearing on TV, basically, I think it was kind of like a TV report or news report about kind of like somebody, it was a Latina reporter talking to someone who claimed to be from the KKK, right? And who also claimed to be a Christian, right? And basically, the reporter was trying to tell him, how do you reconcile the fact that Jesus said, care about your other people, right? And your white supremacist beliefs. And the guy something like, well, all the Bible sayings about caring about other people means those who are equal to you, those who are your brethren, those who are like you. Therefore, I have no obligation to apply that to people who are not like me from a racial standpoint, which I found mind-boggling, because when the reporter asked that, I'm like, how are you going to get around that one? And like, in a way, he did. So I guess you can really, if you really, I agree with you. When you really, your intention is to behave immorally, you always find ways to kind of rationalize that, even if, of course, they're fallacious.
And talking about this, I wish there's a video I'd love to share, but I don't have permission to share it right now. A friend of mine shared it with me, and it's an old video about National Brotherhood Week, and it's from the 60s, and it's a bunch of third graders, and they come in on Tuesday and they talk about racism and bigotry and how people are being judged by the color of their skin. And so the experiment that they set up is on Tuesday, they divide the class into brown-eyed kids and blue-eyed kids. And the blue-eyed kids are the ones that are going to be determined. The teacher just says, you're going to wear a collar, you are inferior, you don't get to do this on the playground. The brown-eyed kids get an extra 5 minutes of recess. And over the course of that afternoon, these third graders turned into little bigoted monsters, bullying the blue-eyed people instantly, just from the fact that some authority said, okay, you got to act this way. And then the very next day, they reversed it and said, hey, we were wrong. Now the brown-eyed kids, you're the ones going to have to wear a collar. And it was done to teach people a lesson, because now everybody's been able to experience this sort of thing. And it's a great lesson. I mean, National Brotherhood Week and these sorts of things were great teaching tools. Whether or not it was ethical to necessarily traumatize a bunch of kids by making them feel that they're inferior, I don't know that we could do that today or actually justify it. But the point is, one teacher with a classroom of students was able to just merely from the position of authority turn all the brown-eyed kids against all the blue-eyed kids, and the very next day reverse it to the point that kids were crying and upset and kids were being awful. This appeal to authority, this referencing some kind of authority that tells us what to do, is exactly what religions are doing. It's what parents are doing. It is a tool that we are born to adhere to because it's beneficial, that can be so awfully misused. And so when I look at the video from like the National Brotherhood Week, and thank you, John Loftus, for sending that to me, it's incredibly appealing to me, not because of what actually happens, but the why it happens. All you needed was one person in a position of authority to convince people who thought they had to do whatever the authority says to act like monsters. And we've seen this not just in third graders, we've seen it in adults. This is how wars get started. This is how atrocities are committed on a regular basis. And so when you have this, hey, people are appealing to a God, well, what has that ever solved? And until a God comes down and says, hey, here's my thoughts on morality, and then follows that up with, what do you think? I don't care what a God says. And if we're actually just going to be using it as this is a really useful way to control people, yes, it is. And so is putting in a third grade teacher to convince people to bully other people. So is having a bunch of people stand backward in an elevator in order to encourage other people to do it. So is the Milgram experiments of getting people to shock people. So authority is an incredibly dangerous thing. And when we live in a world where the majority of people believe in an authority that they cannot demonstrate and that they do not agree on and that they have been fighting about for the bulk of recorded human history, I don't think I want anybody coming to me saying, you know what, there's a problem with secular morality. Let's give this God thing a try. No, there's a problem with God-derived morality, which we've seen over and over and over and over again for the entirety of our history. Let's give secular morality a try.
Plus, I mean, I think you were a Southern Baptist at some point, and I'm sure you understand that if you're really going to like seriously delve into this argument, it doesn't quite work that way, right? Because God's not going to give you the good marks, so you're not going to achieve salvation just by pretending or by behaving like you're moral. I think in most religious interpretations, God cares about how you actually feel and what your actual attitude is, with regards to other human beings, as opposed to just what you do and don't do, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you just, for example, giving
Christianity, though, Christianity,
salvation, that's not going to work.
Yeah, within Christianity, what you do is irrelevant. The only thing that matters is whether or not God has chosen you to be saved.
Well, I guess Protestantism is a branch of Christianity, so yeah, that's true. Although I don't think the Catholics see it that way.
Well, I don't know. The Catholics are a bunch of Mary worshiping idolaters. So, oh wait, I put my Southern Baptist hat back on. Anyway.